You are tired, not from the work itself, from watching yourself do it. The modern world has given you a word for this: burnout, and it has given you solutions. Rest more, set boundaries, log off. Those things are not wrong, but there is a particular tiredness that sleep does not touch. It is the tiredness of a person who has been performing their own life for so long, they cannot remember what it felt like to simply live it. You do a kind thing and immediately register that you did it. You give without telling anyone, and then you tell yourself. You pray, and somewhere behind the prayer, there is a small, watchful eye scoring the quality of the praying. The audience has collapsed into one person, you, and that one-person audience is relentless. It never leaves the theater. What is missing from the modern account is not a technique. It is a diagnosis. The oldest Christian writers saw this clearly. They called the watchful self not a virtue, but a trap. Jesus addresses this directly in the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 1 through 4, he says, "Be careful not to practice your righteousness in front of others to be seen by them. If you do, you will have no reward from your Father in heaven. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly, I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret." Notice what he does not say. He does not say the visible act is worthless. He says it has already been paid. The applause you received is the full wage. Nothing remains to collect. The hidden act, by contrast, is still alive. It has not been cashed in. The inner witness, the self that watches and scores, is just another audience, and an act performed for any audience, including yourself, closes something that was meant to stay open. Thérèse of Lisieux was a 19th century French woman who entered a monastery at 15 and died of tuberculosis at 24. She never preached. She never traveled. She washed dishes, folded laundry, smiled at sisters she found difficult, and said almost nothing about any of it until she was asked to write her memoirs near the end of her life. What she wrote was not a theology. It was a record of attention. She had noticed something about the relationship between smallness and freedom that the grand spiritual projects around her had missed. She called it her little way. But do not let the word little fool you. It is not a consolation prize for people who cannot manage greatness. It is a precision instrument for dismantling the performing self. In her autobiography, Story of a Soul, she writes, "I will seek out a means of getting to heaven by a little way, a way that is very straight, very short, and totally new." The newness she describes is not doctrinal, it is directional. Instead of building upward, accumulating spiritual credit, being seen to ascend, she was going to stop tracking the ascent altogether. What she discovered in practice was this: when she served a sister, she disliked and said nothing about it, and did not savor the private satisfaction of having done the hard thing. Something loosened. The act was no longer a performance for an interior audience. It was simply something that happened between her and God, with no third party watching. She writes again in Story of a Soul, "Miss no single opportunity of making some small sacrifice, here by a smiling look, there by a kindly word, always doing the smallest right and doing it all for love. For love, not for record." The distinction is the whole thing. The desert teachers of the earliest Christian centuries had warned about this. They called the self-observing self-congratulating inner voice, vainglory. The act done to be remembered, even in memory that belongs only to you. Thérèse, without using their vocabulary, arrived at the same place they had mapped centuries before. The cure for vainglory is not self-criticism. It is forgetfulness. You do the thing, and then you let it go. You do not file it. That is the discipline, not severity. Forgetfulness of self, which turns out to be the most restful thing available to a human being. Here is where I want to slow down, because this idea can be misread. This is not an argument that effort is spiritually suspect or that you should stop caring about quality. Thérèse worked hard. She persisted through physical suffering and interior darkness that most of us will not encounter. The little way is not laziness dressed in religious clothing, and it is not a guarantee. Some people practice hiddenness and find freedom. Others find a different trap, the pride of being someone who does not need to be seen, which is its own performance. The oldest Christian writers were honest about this. The self is ingenious. It will colonize almost any virtue and turn it into a mirror. So what is actually being offered here? A direction, not a destination. A practice of noticing when you have become the audience for your own life and then, very quietly, leaving the theater. Not forever. You will come back, but you leave, and each time you leave more easily. The exhaustion you feel has a specific shape. It is the tiredness of someone who has been both actor and critic in an unending production. The hidden act does not make you better. It gives you rest from yourself. 2,000 years of Christian reflection converge on this single strange mercy. The unseen act does not diminish you, it releases you. Today, before the day ends, do one thing that no one will see. Let it go unreported, even inside your own mind. The smallest unreported kindness outlasts the loudest testimony.